On one side, we have the greatest empire of antiquity, opulent and powerful, ruling over approximately one-third of the world's population. On the other, a group of 12 humble and scarcely educated fishermen, driven only by faith in an itinerant preacher who was crucified as a rebel by the very empire. Between these two worlds, a mortal struggle unfolded. Could there be any doubt about the outcome of this battle? The Roman Empire, an apparently invincible colossus, represented the pinnacle of power. Understanding its nature is essential to grasp the origins of the Church. Why is it so crucial to understand the Roman Empire? During the first 450 years of Church history, almost the entire period unfolded under Roman rule. The nascent Church was deeply intertwined with this ancient civilization, into which Christ himself chose to be born. Early on, the Church recognized the critical role this empire played in its trajectory. Some Church fathers believed that even if the Roman Empire was not willed by God, it was at least used as an instrument for the propagation of the gospel. To illustrate this idea, let me share two citations from Scripture. In Galatians chapter 4, verse 4, St. Paul states, "In the fullness of time, God sent his Son." This specific time when everything was prepared to receive Jesus is also described by St. Luke in the Gospel chapter 2 verse 1. In those days a decree went out from Caesar Augustus that the whole world should be registered. What St. Paul calls the fullness of time refers not only to the fulfillment of the Old Covenant but also to the historical context in which Jesus was born and the Church was founded. This world was an integral part of Roman civilization, a cultural, political, and spiritual reality that profoundly influenced the first centuries of Christian history. Understanding the Roman Empire is therefore essential to grasp the environment in which Jesus lived and the Church developed. For 4.5 centuries, the Church coexisted and interacted with this civilization, shaping and being shaped by it. Those who delve deeply into Church history recognize that Rome was a cornerstone for the growth and consolidation of Christianity. The Roman Empire was not merely another civilization like Egypt, Mesopotamia, or China. It held a special role in the spiritual plan, to the point that some Church fathers claimed Rome was used by God for the purposes of evangelization. To explore this idea, I quote in historian Pierre Grimal from his work, "The Roman Civilization. The action of Rome is felt in all domains, national and political spaces, aesthetics and morality, values of all kinds, legal systems of states, customs, and everyday life. Even religious life retains the mark of Rome. Was it not within the empire that Christianity was born, achieved its first victories, formed its hierarchy, and to some extent matured its doctrine?" Grimal emphasizes that Rome's influence was pervasive and formative. Nothing we know today would be as it is without Rome. This empire shaped not only the political geography of its time, but also the cultural and spiritual values that enabled the Church to flourish. However, it is difficult for us today to grasp the magnitude of the Roman Empire. At the time the Church was born, there is nothing in the modern world comparable to what Rome represented in terms of power, stability, and cultural impact. When Jesus was born, the empire was at the height of its civilization, with a stability and sense of permanence that gave people the impression that its rule would never end. This moment of grandeur is artistically captured in the Aeneid, the epic poem by Virgil. Written at the beginning of Rome's Golden Age, it reflects the Roman belief that they were a people destined by divine forces for great achievements. A significant example is the passage in which Jupiter promises Venus, the mother of Aeneas, that the Romans will have an empire without end. This vision of Rome as a chosen and immortal nation deeply influenced the mindset of its citizens. According to tradition, Rome was founded on April 21st, 753 BC. In its early centuries, the city was ruled by a monarchy, but in 510 BC, the Republic was established, marking the beginning of nearly 500 years of expansion and consolidation. During the Republic, Rome evolved from a mere city-state into a power that dominated the entire Italian peninsula, and eventually the Mediterranean. It was during this Republican period that Rome showcased its ability to integrate various peoples and cultures under its administration, a characteristic essential to its survival and prosperity. In the 1st century BC, following intense civil wars, Julius Caesar's nephew, Octavian, was proclaimed Augustus in 27 BC, ushering in the Roman Empire. This event was crucial for centralizing power and stabilizing Roman society. The imperial period brought the Pax Romana, an era of relative peace and stability lasting about 2 centuries. This peace allowed Christianity, which began as a small sect, to find in the Roman Empire's structure an ideal environment for propagation. At its zenith, the Roman Empire spanned territories stretching from Britannia to the Middle East, including North Africa and much of Europe. It incorporated diverse cultures and peoples, unifying them under a single administration and legal system. This unification, combined with advanced infrastructure like roads and communication systems, was a decisive factor in the spread of the gospel. The period that began with Augustus, Rome's first emperor, was marked as the Golden Age of Rome. After decades of civil conflict that shook the Republic, Augustus brought stability and prosperity by establishing the Principate in 27 BC. He ruled until AD 14, during which time Jesus was born, as narrated in the Gospel of Luke. Augustus deeply reformed the administration of Rome, creating a strong central government and institutions suitable for managing a vast empire. He also promoted a series of public works that revitalized the city, such as roads, aqueducts, and buildings, and implemented social reforms aimed at restoring traditional Roman virtues. His governance brought such prosperity that many Romans believed there was no longer anything to ask of the gods. Moreover, the Pax Romana, initiated by Augustus, brought peace to the Roman world, enabling cultural and economic expansion. During the next 2 centuries, the empire thrived as the most powerful and influential civilization of the known world. This stability became one of the pillars that allowed the Christian Church to grow and consolidate. Rome's apex was not limited to its territorial expansion. It was also a period of cultural and spiritual flourishing. Roman civilization was deeply influenced by Greek culture, which the Romans assimilated and adapted, creating a unique cultural synthesis. This blend of cultures fostered an intellectual environment that would later help the Church articulate its theology. For example, Stoic philosophy profoundly influenced Roman thought, emphasizing values like discipline, self-control, and duty. These ideals were compatible with many Christian virtues, facilitating cultural transition when Christianity began gaining followers within the empire. In addition, Rome promoted unprecedented infrastructure, such as roads and safe maritime routes, facilitating the movement of people and ideas. This connectivity was vital for the dissemination of Christianity, which found in Roman roads and the security of the Pax Romana the means to reach the farthest corners of the empire. St. Paul, in his letter to the Galatians, speaks of the fullness of time, referring to the exact moment chosen by God to send His Son into the world. This period, under Roman rule, was characterized by historical and cultural conditions that prepared the way for the spread of the gospel. Among these conditions were political and territorial unification. The vast reach of the empire provided a unified territory, facilitating the spread of ideas. Common language, Greek, widely spoken, served as a lingua franca, allowing communication across diverse peoples. Advanced infrastructure, Roman roads and Mediterranean peace created safe routes for missionaries like St. Paul. Cultural synthesis, the integration of various cultures and philosophies intellectually prepared the ancient world for the gospel. These factors demonstrate how divine providence used the Roman Empire as a tool for expanding the Christian message. The growth of Rome, from a small city-state to a vast empire, was largely due to the virtues that shaped the character of the Roman people. Among these virtues, the following stood out: community belonging. For Romans, the individual was subordinate to the group. The city, or civitas, represented the highest good, for which citizens were willing to sacrifice even their lives. This strong sense of civic duty was essential for the expansion and preservation of the empire. Love for order and tradition. Romans deeply valued stability and permanence. They believed there was an order in the cosmos and human life that needed to be preserved at all costs. Abrupt changes were seen as disorders and were avoided whenever possible. Pierre Greimal wrote that the Roman condemned anything that threatened the regularity of rites and the continuity of tradition, temperance and modesty. The ideal Roman was austere and disciplined, avoiding excessive luxury and disordered pleasures, which were seen as weakening both individuals and society. For them, luxury led to idleness, and idleness to vice. Self-control. The quintessential masculine virtue was self-mastery. A disciplined Roma could control his instincts and desires, placing the common good above personal interests. This was evident in the organized ranks of the legions, symbolizing the internal order of the Roman soul, piety and fidelity. Devotion to the gods, parents, and the city was central to Roman life. Honoring traditions and keeping commitments were fundamental duties. Fides, or fidelity to one's word, was so highly esteemed that Romans preferred death over breaking a promise. Despite the virtues that built Rome, the peak of the empire also sowed the seeds of its decline. Wealth and luxury corrupted Roman morality. Patrician families, once dedicated to public service, indulged in luxury and idleness. The plebeians, in turn, abandoned work to depend on free distributions of food and entertainment provided by the state. This moral decline profoundly impacted the social structure. Low birth rates, the pursuit of comfort and pleasure, led to the rejection of children, with practices like contraception and abortion becoming common. Family disintegration, marriages declined, while adultery and divorce increased, weakening the family bonds that once upheld society. Growing inequality. Wealth concentration created a plutocratic elite, while the plebeians increasingly depended on bread and circuses. These changes created an unbalanced society, in which the virtues that had sustained Rome began to fade. The struggle between the nascent church and the Roman Empire was indeed a life or death battle. The church's victory over such a colossal power attests to its divine origin. As Tertullian famously declared, the blood of the martyrs is the seed of the church. Through persecution and eventual triumph, the history of the church reveals its supernatural mission to transform societies and bring the light of the gospel to all nations. Understanding this narrative is not just about history. It is about recognizing the eternal relevance of the church's mission in the world.